Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope everybody has had a great week so far and that you're looking forward to the weekend. Hopefully, you guys have some good plans or something exciting or relaxing to do over the weekend. Today, we are going to be talking about, I think it's pretty obvious based off of the thumbnail and the title is there's been a hot topic that has stirred up a lot of controversy on the YouTube platform, bleeding into Twitter and everywhere else that this is being discussed. And I have my own opinions. Some of you guys have asked me for some of my opinions, and some people aren't going to care about my opinion, and that's totally fine. But I want to talk about this from my perspective. I want to talk about it from my viewpoint. And some of the opinions I have are going to be somewhat unpopular, what it seems from majority. But I'm okay with that because I've always kind of wanted to speak my truth and my experiences and bring that to the platform. And I always try to apply that to topics that I discuss. So this is something that I have waited to talk about for quite some time. I've been debating back and forth for over a week if I was going to talk about it publicly, just because it is something that, although my opinions are unpopular and I'm fine with that, it's something that has emotionally to some degree affected me. And one of the criticisms I give to other creators when I'm critiquing their content and talking about stuff that they're engaging in is not to react emotionally. So I've tried my best to really sit down and really try and view all sides of this and come to my conclusion. And I have been extremely in my feels, so to speak, over this. And they've not been good feelings. I'll be 100% honest with you guys. But before we get into where my issues lie and the opinions I have and kind of how this played out a little bit, I'm going to say hi to the people who are here. And then I'm probably just going to talk and then refer to the chat later. So I'm not going to 100% be paying attention to the chat the whole time I'm talking. So without further ado, I also want to say that everything I talk about are my opinions based off of my experience, whether that be personally, professionally, whatever way I maybe end up talking about stuff. I'll try to verify and clarify why I have the viewpoint I do. For anyone who may watch this who's never been on my channel and doesn't know anything about me, I am a child. I'm an adult now, clearly, but I grew up with a lot of trauma. I grew up in foster care for 10 years of my life before I was adopted. And I've been open about my story and the traumas that I've faced during those years. And due to all of that, I decided that I wanted to give back to my community. And I got a bachelor's in social work, and I worked in child protection as an investigator for 3 years. That was 2 years ago, so my knowledge to that could be different, but I'm going to just be talking about from the experiences I have both personally and professionally when it revolves around this hot topic and controversial topic. So I'm going to go ahead and say my hellos, and then we'll get on into it. So thank you all for being here. Hello, Claire. Hey, Xylee. Hey, Beauty Demon. Michelle, Suzanne, how not to move to Costa Rica. Hey, Kiki. I'm not sure. Mermaid in the ICU. Hopefully I said that right. Hey, Miss Melissa. Tutu Queen. Hey, Dina. Good to see you. Hey, Dr. Cross. Hey, Kim S. Kathy Ann. Sue Elliott. Anna Fulla. Hopefully I said that right. Maximum Effort. LG. Dark Magician. Sally. Heather McDonald. Hello, everyone. Shaylin, it's good to see you all. And Kentucky Girl. So I'm going to stop saying hello. Otherwise, I think we would be here for forever. So I appreciate you all being here and having any amount of interest into what my opinion on this topic is. So I'm only going to be talking about a portion of the totality of the situation, because really when it comes to Trisha Paytas, the history is forever long. I will say here, even though I know it will fall on deaf ears who don't want to hear my perspective, I am not a supporter of Trisha. I never have been a supporter of Trisha. She is extremely problematic. She is a known pathological liar. She has her fair share of issues. Okay. So take that what you will. I'm not trying to defend Trisha. I'm just trying to provide people a different perspective as to why it is starting to become more spoken about on why people don't like the series that Mysterious has done. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. Mysterious, formerly known as Mysterious T. I am going to try my best to refer to her as Mysterious. I can't promise that I'm going to remember to drop that second part off all the time when referring to this. Thank you, Sally, for your super chat. That means a lot to me. I appreciate it. You didn't have to do that. So Mysterious came out with these series of videos. She did two, and it was expected, and I think it's now back expected that she's going to continue the series. In this series, she does this first episode kind of laying out Trisha's childhood and how she got to where she is. She did a lot of research as far as like reading her book and looking through old content, and I'm sure that was time consuming. She does an awesome job at editing. The videos themselves are great. The issues I have is with the underlying messages that I picked up on, and I think it is because of my personal bias, and I think this is why people have issues with how these videos were done. Going into episode 2, she focused more on she further expanded on her first episode and was trying to portray Trisha to be a liar, and which we all know is true, and was perpetuating that she lies about absolutely everything. The issues I have with these are, as somebody who has trauma, watching these videos, the first episode, about halfway through, I started to feel that the motive behind the videos maybe wasn't what she intended. And I don't know if this was done intentionally or unintentionally. I'm not going to put that on Mysterious at this point. I don't think it's fair for me to, at this point in time, assume what her motive is. I'm just talking about it from like as if I had just gotten done viewing them. She puts together all of Trisha's childhood in this video format, which was extensive, and there was a lot of information. And as I was watching it, I continued to see aspects of trauma that Trisha has experienced. And Mysterious in her videos even acknowledge some of the trauma, like the abandonment from her father and things like that. And then she starts to include clips that contradict each other and contradict how over the years Trisha's stories and inconsistencies lie with how she has said things or how she has represented things previously, that things are not always the same. For me, that speaks to the trauma that was all supported in the first half of the video. So once some of the commentary started to play into it, it seemed that there was a narrative intending to be pushed. And I don't know, again, if it was an intentional narrative or if it was her personal bias coming out in how she was editing these clips to support her opinion, which is fine. Like, as a creator, you have the ability to push out your content however you want to. But when you're talking about really serious issues that people have experienced, I felt that in this first episode near the end, it came off to me that Mysterious was discrediting or diminishing the trauma that she had displayed for everybody. And it really rubbed me in a bad way, because I'm somebody who does hold childhood trauma. And I'm somebody who has overshared and who has put my trauma and my story on my platform. And I know that as time has gone on and I have continued to open up with you guys about situations from my childhood and that trauma, there are times when I may have expanded on things and I may have provided additional details to maybe the basis of the story that I told when I first started my channel. And what gets to me is how this was portrayed. I could see somebody now thinking that it's okay to maybe try and discredit me as having childhood trauma, because that's the precedent that was kind of being set in this video. And again, I don't know if that was her intended intention, if she intended for people to feel the same way. But that's how I was taking it, is she was just saying, oh, here's all of this trauma, but because there's so many inconsistencies with her stories over the time, we can't believe any of that. But if she had maybe researched trauma, and maybe she did and she just didn't want to include that because it didn't go with the flow of her video, who knows? But it felt that that research maybe wasn't done or wasn't included. And the reality is, a lot of what was being pieced together in that video could be explained by trauma. And I know from personal experience, I know from professional experience, that you can repress memories. I have repressed a ton of memories. It affects me to this day, to where I have long-term memory issues, because my mind has wired itself so much from all of the trauma I experienced to not always remember everything, especially the way in great detail that it may have occurred. However, when you seek therapy or you start to work through that trauma on your own, you may start to see a bigger picture. And it is common in trauma for things that Trisha exhibits to happen. Now, am I trying to say that Trisha has never lied about these things, or that she's never exaggerated situations in her videos? No, I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to express to people who don't understand why people have issues with the mysterious videos, why they probably do. And it has things to do with discrediting and diminishing someone else's trauma. And for me, it almost is now setting the precedence in this already toxic space that YouTube can be. It not always is, but that it can be, is it's okay now to question someone if they're a liar. And I don't think that that's fair, when some of it can be explained by actual psychology and by actual trauma-based therapy and trauma-based research. Misremembering things is common. When it comes to Trisha and her talking about how she really liked older men, could be a result, and this is just my opinion here, it could be a result of her abandonment from her father. So I understand it maybe isn't 100% normal for people to experience. People with trauma, it is, because if you're not getting therapy or you're not working through the trauma, you learn how to cope on your own. And based off of all of the information shown in Mysterious's part 1, I am inclined to believe that when Trisha was younger, she was probably not getting the assistance to work through the abandonment, to work through the custody. And it appears to me, based off of what we have seen from that video, for taking just Mysterious's video, that her mom was more of a friend to her than a parental figure, at least when we look at the video and how it was laid out. And that's where I have the issues, is I have the issue that someone can be a liar, someone can be a pathological liar, and maybe have lied about certain aspects. But I find it very dangerous to start making this a normal thing for YouTube creators to start flippantly discrediting people who have trauma. And again, that is the precedent that I see being put forth with these videos, is it doesn't matter. It's Trisha. She's a liar, so it doesn't matter. She's lying about everything, even though the video that she shows contradicts that she's a liar if you know anything about trauma or if you have experienced trauma, which in the bigger picture, Mysterious says she wants to hold Trisha accountable to some of her behaviors. And I understand that. I think a lot of people want Trisha to be held accountable. I 100% understand that. But the flip side is, for me, I don't think Mysterious understands that the underlying tones of her videos is harmful to people who have childhood trauma, because she did nothing but discredit Trisha's childhood trauma, in my opinion. And she discredits misdiagnosing, and she discredits sexual assault. And I know that that probably is not her intention, but that is how the videos come off at least to me. And again, I am stating that there's a bias there because I'm somebody who has had trauma. I'm somebody who, in these clips that are like trying to be proven as contradictory and her lying, don't necessarily come off as lying to me. It comes off as trauma and her coping through her trauma. Does that mean her behavior should be excused because she has had trauma? Absolutely not. But it is an explanation. And I always hold that same thing when it comes to mental health. You can't use your mental health as an excuse for your behavior, but can it be an explanation and maybe help you learn to not do that behavior anymore? Absolutely. And the same thing comes to trauma. It's just the videos overall, although they were well done, I'm definitely not trying to be harsh on Mysterious for any like unwarranted reason. I hate that she left the platform because she was getting criticism or whatever. I'm assuming it's because of criticism, because people were starting to speak out in the same sentiment. Some people are fixating more on the essay aspect, and some people are focusing more on the mental health aspect. I'm focusing on it more as an entire situation, like all three things combined. The video was well done. Both of the videos were well done, but the way that they were put together is very questionable to me. I feel like the videos were put together with an underlying bias that either wasn't, like, maybe Mysterious didn't realize she had this underlying bias, or she intended it to come out as she wanted it to, which there's nothing really wrong with whichever it ends up falling into, but it can become disingenuous when you're trying to say that you're coming from an unbiased perspective, when clearly, in my opinion, none of these videos were unbiased. They were very much pushing a narrative that no one should have empathy or sympathy for Trisha, because even though I'm going to lay out all the trauma she experienced, because she's lied and contradicted herself, we shouldn't believe that trauma exists. I don't think that that's a fair thing to do to anyone. And again, I can't help but put myself in that position to think like, well, what if somebody watches my old videos and then they see a more recent video where I have expanded on some of the trauma that I experienced in my childhood? It's setting the precedent to say, like, okay, you're a liar. You didn't experience that 10 years of abuse because you contradicted yourself here. When the contradictions are a normal part of coping and a normal part of trauma. And working through that looks different for everyone. And I don't think that that's healthy. And I think it is dangerous to have that put out into the world and not acknowledge it. I don't know, like overall, it just the underlying aspects of it in the guise that it's to call one person out, it's just setting a precedent that it's now okay to question anyone if they're deemed a liar. And I just don't agree with that. I don't feel like that's fair to put on anyone, because you can be a shitty person and shitty things have happened to you in your life. It doesn't mean that you're lying about it. Just because there's inconsistencies throughout the years doesn't mean that you've lied about it. It could be done through work of therapy. It could be done through work of your own self-reflection and looking back. For myself, the way I view my childhood now and like the situations that I viewed when I was younger are very different than what I would recall them as a child. For instance, my biological mother, I used to think was the most amazing person in the planet. Keep in mind, I was in foster care. I was never in my mother's care, but I thought she was, because my brain, responding to the trauma, was blocking and repressing the bad things that I had experienced. And as I got older, I was able to work with therapy and started to realize some of the things that I was experiencing weren't safe and weren't healthy situations. And the older I get, I definitely see things differently. That doesn't mean that when I was a child, I was lying about it, though. And that trauma can happen like that at any age. And it seems from the videos that Trisha had experienced multiple traumas over her life, even into her adult life. I think it's safe to say that she was still experiencing trauma. And I just don't like the precedent to say that it's now okay to question everybody's trauma and to claim that they're a liar because they have contradicted themselves. Also, when it comes to the essay aspect, I get Trisha spoke things that weren't true about her accused abuser, but I don't think that it's fair that because she misspoke, we can just diminish the fact that she's disclosed that she was touched inappropriately. And when we're using old clips and current clips of them talking about their teachers, how many teachers do you have in middle school and high school? If you're in a traditional school like I went to, where you have multiple periods and multiple teachers, it is totally possible that she had positive experiences with some of her teachers, and then in other instances she didn't, and she was treated inappropriately or touched inappropriately. I know of situations like that happened in my school when I was going to school. I also have worked investigations before on schools where teachers were being inappropriate to students. It's not totally out of left field. And again, this isn't to defend Trisha at all. This is just more for people to see a different perspective as to why so many people are now like having issues with the videos as a whole, because they do come off as if we're just trying to totally discredit anything awful that happened to Trisha because she misspoke about an alleged perpetrator. And I understand that. Like, please don't get that confused that that there's questions about her naming someone. I 100% understand where people are coming from. And I 100% understand people saying, well, Mysterious used Trisha's own words. She did, but she also did the research to make sure the videos that she included were going to support what she wanted it to support. At the same time, I have seen multiple videos at this point of other people providing information, statistical and article information supporting that Trisha's contradicting and misrepresenting things in different time periods of her life are a totally normal coping mechanism and aspect of trauma. And that's why for me, it's so hard to talk about, because I feel that way. Like, I can identify with Trisha in the sense that I misrepresent my childhood over the years. I've misremembered aspects of memories that I have. Doesn't mean I'm a liar. It doesn't mean that I didn't experience that trauma. And that's where my issues overall come from when looking at these videos as a whole. The last thing I'm going to say, because I understand people's arguments about the name teacher, and I don't want to go too far into that, but the only thing I do want to address is it just rubs me off wrong that the part of the second part was proving how much of an upstanding citizen this gentleman was. And if he is wrongly accused, then that's absolutely terrible, and it shouldn't have happened. And there's so many things that we can go to with that. But overall, what I want to say is, just because someone seems like an upstanding, great person and the community thinks that they're an amazing person, doesn't mean that they aren't. It doesn't mean that they don't do things that they have maybe been accused of. I've worked cases on people who have been thought to be amazing people who would never do certain things publicly. Like, we have seen a number of high officials and things like that who turn out to have engaged in some terrible behavior. So I think it was more just to defend him, and I understand her aspect of that. But I also think it's important to not allow that to overshadow the fact that good people can do bad things. Again, I do understand why Mysterious had that part in her video. It's also kind of dangerous, in my opinion, to not really shed light on the actual issues, that just because somebody is an upstanding citizen doesn't mean that they won't do terrible things. if that makes any sense. So I am going to take a break from my thoughts and kind of go through some of the chat. I agree, stitching with the sisterlies, about naming names. Absolutely. I 100% agree that that never should have been done, especially if she wasn't 100% sure. But it also shouldn't negate the fact that it is a possibility. The reality is, the only two people who for sure in this world knows if that teacher was inappropriate with Trisha is Trisha and this person who unfortunately is no longer with us. So it's a lose-lose no matter what. It can be proven based off of the Google search that what she put out there was incorrect, but that doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that it didn't happen. It could have still happened. There's plenty of people who fly under the radar who are known to be these amazing, upstanding citizens who are engaging in behavior like this. It's not the first time it's happened, and unfortunately, it's not going to be the last. Exactly, Dark Magician. You can have a bias, but you do have a responsibility to present both sides fairly. I agree. Like, you can have a bias and you can still, if you're going to be forming a video from a creator standpoint, I think it's your responsibility to make sure all aspects are being portrayed, especially if you're claiming that you're trying to be unbiased in your reporting. It only is just more genuine if you're honest with your audience and you say, I have a bias to this, and talk about it from there. That way people can understand you may be implying some of your bias unintentionally, and it just allows the viewer to really think critically about what they're watching and not just take it as 100% fact. That's also just an issue overall on this platform, is YouTube is supposed to be entertaining, and unfortunately, well, it's not unfortunate, but the content that seems to be being created now is way more heavy and serious based. It's a lot more of calling out people for inappropriate behavior, for abusing their use of power, and hitting more heavy, serious topics. And the problem with making content like that is, when people are coming to the app just to enjoy and be entertained and listen to a story, they may not be as inclined to fact check what you're saying, or to see if there is a bias there, or to really look into it themselves. They're just taking what they're hearing from a YouTuber that they respect and running with it. And if it is laced with a whole bunch of bias and not entire research, perpetuating misinformation or someone else's bias can be damaging, and it can potentially cause further issues. You don't think anyone denies they experienced trauma. The issue is stating someone was arrested when there isn't any proof. I agree, Bugsy. Like I said, I do agree with that aspect, and I definitely understand where people are questioning that particular aspect of it, but I don't think that it's appropriate to bleed that in to say that it didn't happen, or to imply that you think the trauma happened in a different scenario. It's not appropriate to push that out on anyone. It's just not appropriate. And in my opinion, it's not appropriate for a creator to say, oh yeah, I think they experienced trauma, but I think it's wrong. It's just not your place to do that. It's no one's place to do that. Also possible she thought of things differently as a teen to be able to make sense of it. That's definitely could be a possibility too. Yeah, I understand that aspect of it, stitching with the sisterlies. Mysterious said herself she didn't believe any teacher touched her, and that her I don't think they ever get married. Was it a stepfather or just a boyfriend? I can't remember that aspect of it. I mean, there's aspects, like if I wanted to nitpick the videos and like where I particularly have the biggest issues, I mean, there's multiple areas that I would have issues with this. I actually reacted to her videos as a blind react for my members. And it's very clear where issues like that I ended up having that my problems kind of were questioning the narrative and if there was a narrative being pushed, because it's not appropriate for you to, as a creator, for you to diminish someone's trauma, especially when it comes to SA, because we're now in this movement of the Metoo, and we're finally gaining traction to where survivors are actually starting to feel comfortable to go to authorities. The reality and the statistics about survivors of SA is that they don't often tell people. And it's an even smaller statistic that they go to the authorities, and let alone how hard it is for law enforcement and lawyers to actually prosecute when it comes to SA. It is extremely hard to do. And a lot of it does, unfortunately, in today's judicial system, rely on the survivor. So it's not right. It's not a good look, in my opinion, to sit here and discredit all of the trauma while you are also laying out all of the trauma. That's why I question if there's a narrative or what a motive may be, or if there was an underlying bias in these series, because why would you try so hard to discredit somebody's trauma that you clearly have painted that they've had? And is it because of your own bias of not liking that person, or the public opinion of not liking this person, that you're comfortable doing it? Are you not realizing the precedent that it is setting, that it's okay to do this now, and that you're not really maybe identifying that you could be harming a lot of other subsects of people who have had childhood trauma, people who have been SA'd. And listen, I understand that there are people who have been survivors who have appreciated Mysterious's videos. I understand that. And they're not invalid in feeling that Mysterious's videos were done well, or that they supported what she did, or like how they were laid out. But for me, I can't help but question, do they only feel that way because of these videos? Because there is an underlying bias in these videos. It is very clear, the more that I watch them, that there's a bias here, that she really just doesn't like Trisha. And that's totally fine. And it doesn't mean that she shouldn't have made the videos. I just think she maybe should have included a little bit more information that wouldn't discredit anybody who has these traumas. Because the videos as a whole, for me, does discredit, and maybe will make it hard for people who have these traumas to talk about them, because this person has discredited Trisha. I mean, that is a large reality here. And if it was a little bit more unbiased and she acknowledged some of the opposing aspects, that, hey, listen, this is how I feel, but it could be a result of trauma, I probably wouldn't have the feelings about these videos that I do. I mean, I'm being 100% honest. If she included some of the actual statistical information about some of the things that she was showing, or if she gave the benefit of the doubt that, listen, this can be a result of trauma, it is a possibility, but I am inclined to believe that there's just too many mistakes, there's too many mismatched information for me to believe her, I probably wouldn't have as harsh of criticism about how these videos were laid out, if that makes sense. Thank you for joining Stitching with the Sisterlies. I appreciate that. Thank you, Kiki Ray, for your super chat. I mean, I know I'm probably in a minority when it comes to like my overall opinions of everything, but I also am aware and can understand where people agree and support the videos. I absolutely can. But for me, it bothers me, because I can't help but put myself in that situation. What if it was my own words being used? Sorry, my dog's in here. My own words being used against me because I've provided a little bit additional information further down the line, because I started to feel more comfortable to open up about things. It doesn't necessarily mean that I lied about it to begin with. you wish she'd finish her series to show a fuller aspect. I don't know if that's her intention. And if it is, like, I'm not trying to say she shouldn't be doing videos or anything. I'm just providing where some of my criticism and my feelings about these videos come from, and maybe try to help people understand why there are more people now speaking up that they didn't like the series. And the only way I can do that is talk about how I tie into that and the emotions I had in relation to watching these series. What did Amber say? In my honest opinion, the way Mysterious questioned Trisha Paytas's essay is like people saying she was asking for it with that short dress. It's very victim blame mentality. And I can understand that aspect. And that does come off in the series. And again, I can't help but question, is that her underlying bias that's coming out, or is that how she actually feels? Or is it just because it's Trisha Paytas and she doesn't like Trisha that she was she felt confident in doing this? For me, the law itself makes it hard for survivors. This is bigger than this one video. Let's look at innocent until proven guilty. This puts the soul. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Dark Magician. Your biggest issue is that she didn't just say she didn't believe Trisha. She said things like no one would have behaved that way if they were a victim. Comments like that in her commentary that she provided were very shocking to me, because it is victim blaming kind of speech. Also, it's a trauma response and how people cope with trauma. Like I said earlier, I used to speak phenomenally of my biological mother. I don't anymore, because when I was younger, I was viewing things through rose-tinted glasses, because my brain, as a result of the trauma I experienced with this person, blocked out the bad parts. It took until I was older and was starting to working through that I was able to see some of these situations for what they were. And that comes to the same thing with the essay. Just because she has spoken highly of her teachers before doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And why is it okay to totally say because somebody has a habit of lying and is a pathological liar on their YouTube, that when they're trying to be true to themselves and talk about some serious things that have happened to them, that they're not being honest in that, just because there's small nuances and changing and contradictions in how they have represented it in the past versus now. It could be her working through that trauma, and her behavior towards older men and things like that, again, could be a result of her trauma. I'm not saying it is, but it could be. That aspect is totally overlooked. And a lot of times when she, in my opinion, when she does start to discredit Trisha and her different traumas, she tries it. Her reasoning is it's not likely, or this doesn't ever happen. And for me, when she's doing this, I'm like, yeah, it does happen. Like, it may not have been from personal experience of those situations that she's made those comments to, like about teachers being inappropriate and it being unlikely. It's extremely likely, actually. It is very likely, and it is a lot more common than people realize that teachers engage in inappropriate behavior with students. It happens a lot more often. And I think it is almost damaging to perpetuate that it doesn't happen. You never know who's watching your channel. You could have a teenager who watches that video who maybe had an experience with their teacher, and they maybe won't talk about it now because they viewed this video of someone discrediting another person. That's where my issues come. Exactly. I said that, Shay. Some SA victims never report. Some never tell anyone. Some only tell friends. And oftentimes, statistically, SA survivors do not go to law enforcement because they are so often misbelieved. And that's why a lot of movement was happening with the Me Too movement. And we started changing as a society our thought process when someone discloses that you should believe them unless there's a reason not to. And her being a troll and a pathological liar online, for me, is not enough to say that it's okay to think that her trauma never happened or that she never had these experiences. Whether there's inconsistencies or not, I just don't, it's damaging. It's damaging to that whole movement. It's damaging as a society for how far we have come to believe survivors. It's starting to re-put in that rhetoric that it's okay to believe people if they've known to be a liar, which some of the lies I don't think were actual lies personally. I think it was her working through her trauma and remembering things differently. Now, am I going to say that for every aspect in every clip that was shown? No, because I do believe in some instances that Trisha was over exaggerating things, and it could be for her channel. And is that damaging? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that she didn't experience those traumas. And it doesn't mean that we should be able to diminish or discredit her trauma because of those things. You live in an area where most victims don't report. It's so sad. And I can't help but wonder, like, Mysterious grew very quickly from these series, which is congratulations to her. Like, if you're going to put in the time, the work, and the effort to put together videos, no matter how they're perceived by anybody, it's awesome that she has gotten the feedback that she has and that she has grown. Like, congratulations. I'm happy for her in that aspect, but you also have to, like, take into account, you have all of these people and you don't know where they're at in their lives. You don't know what they have experienced. And I always try to, when I'm making my content, I always try to think of if any random person didn't know me come across my video, I would want to try and be sure that I provide my opinion, but also provide all aspects that are possibly there. And when you have a video that gains traction like that, I understand it's hard to negate and it's probably hard to work through when you have stuff that goes viral and it's unexpected attention, it's unexpected criticisms, and you're working through how to work through that. You know, we can all have our own opinions about how she handled it. I don't personally, her leaving the way she did, I don't think helped. It didn't help for her to leave. I'm happy she's back. If she continues her series, I hope she listens to a little bit of the criticism. I'm not saying she needs to change her opinion or change her content or not continue the series. By any means am I saying that. I just want her to maybe view things from some of the points of view that the critics have, because I only think it will make her series better, to be honest. It's going to kind of block out some of that criticism that people have. It's not to be, you know, like I'm coming for her. I'm not. I'm just talking about how these videos came off to me and how I think that the videos can be dangerous. If it had an emotional impact on me, it's very likely it had impacts on other people too. Her behavior online is indicating a lot of trauma. The real issue is that she needs help, and closest to her fail her. Yeah, and I can agree with that, Dina. I do think it's very clear that she has had trauma, and I think because she's never worked through her trauma in its entirety, she continues to put herself in vulnerable positions to continue to be further traumatized. Again, that is a common thing of people who have trauma and who hold trauma and haven't worked through it, to put themselves repeatedly in a situation for more trauma to be occurred. You don't think she should have deleted all her videos or just disappeared? It makes it look like she did have an ulterior motive. I don't know. I can see both aspects of her leaving. If it's because she got a lot of criticism and backlash and she just couldn't handle it at the scale she was getting it. So she thought running would, or deleting her stuff and trying to move on would help. But I agree. It really doesn't help her. It doesn't help when the criticism is people questioning your motive, questioning how you're being defensive when people are asking you stuff, and then you just leave and you leave people hanging dry. It's almost a slap in the face to the audience she did obtain from those videos, that it's just too much for her and she couldn't handle it. I'm happy she's back. If she continues to do her series, then wonderful. But I mean, I don't think it's fair for her to not understand why people are going to question her for just like trying to dip out for a while. I'm happy she's back, and hopefully she does take some of the criticism and she moves towards including some of the criticisms in her videos, because again, I only think it will help her content if she openly listens to some of the criticisms that people have. I understand that. However, being as sensitive as you can regarding these triggering topics, that applies to every creator. I agree, Anna. It does apply to every creator. Trauma affects self-esteem too, and could cause her to out herself in bad situations. I mean, there's a lot of different aspects of trauma and how trauma can affect you and how it will impact you as an adult. The trauma I've experienced definitely shaped who I am today, and is why I have characteristics of my personality that I do. It was learned behavior from going through the trauma that I went through. It's an unfortunate reality when you deal with anything traumatic, whether it's a one-time traumatic incident or if it's over multiple years or multiple different forms of trauma. Everybody's going to respond to it differently. Everyone is going to try and cope with it differently. It really depends on where you are in your development when trauma happens, and the support system around you on how you're going to learn to cope with it or try to self-cope with it. And self-coping with trauma can be further damaging. It can cause people to seek out substances. It can cause you to continue to put yourself in vulnerable situations. It can have a lot of negative impacts. That's not to say that there aren't positive impacts that trauma can also be a result of. But overall, I just think there should have been more sensitivity around the opinion-based commentary that was included, and been a little bit more open-minded and included more information that it was solely their opinion, that she thought that she was lying, but it could be a result of the trauma. Xylee pointed out that Mysterious was much more generous with someone named Shane than she was with Trisha. So there's that. Mysterious set herself up with her own contradictions. Yeah, I mean, we could go down. This live was more or less for me to talk about my unpopular opinions about the videos in its entirety. I definitely have more opinions when it comes to the motive aspect and the bias aspect. I just don't want this live to be all about those particular situations, because we would be here for a lot longer. If that's a conversation that you guys want to have, like, I'm open to continuing to provide my opinions on those aspects on a later day. But not today. I kind of wanted to just keep it on my overall issues with her videos and why I have those issues and where I'm coming from, to maybe help some people who don't understand why some of us are questioning the videos in their entirety. I'm not questioning Mysterious really in this, but going down, talking about who she has previously supported and situations that they've been in, that kind of goes more into her bias and the potential motive of her doing these videos. And that's a totally different topic. And I would need to collect my thoughts, because those thoughts for me are still not refined. So I would be a lot more harsh and I would be more biased in giving my opinions on those particular aspects of it. But like I said, if that's something that you guys would be interested in, I'm open to having a live stream over the weekend or beginning of next week to continue the conversation. But for today, I just want to focus it on this particular aspect of it. I'm glad she's back. She's talented, but she has to understand people are going to have different opinions. Yeah, I agree. And again, that why I just overall her leaving is very confusing to me. I don't understand why she left. When you have videos that go viral and you're gaining a lot of traction, it's like you're almost always going to have negative attraction as well, especially when you're talking about a polarizing figure like Trisha Paytas. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So if she was ill prepared to deal with that, I can understand, but I don't understand the reaction of just deleting everything and leaving everybody who has come to enjoy you high and dry. I don't understand that aspect of it. I really don't. I understand needing a break and like going away, but it seems, and this is my opinion, it seems very temper tantrum like, that when you start to not get your way or people start to disagree with you, to just like throw a temper tantrum and storm out. That's kind of the vibes I get from it. I'm happy she's back though, and her coming back kind of makes me feel even more that it was more of just like a sudden reaction, which if she's an emotional person, which it seems, seeing some of her older content and how she reacts to certain things in lives, that she is more of an emotional person. Maybe she should have placed some boundaries to navigate these types of situations. It's always easier said than done. So I don't know. I really don't know. I am happy, like I said multiple times at this point, I'm happy she's back. I hope she continues to make great content. I just hope she is more willing to listen to people critiquing or giving their criticisms, because it's not all laced with negativity. Like, I'm not trying to be negative towards her. I think she did a good job. I just think she inserted too much of her personal bias and it went unchecked. And again, who knows if that was intentional or not? No one knows that but Mysterious. We can all speculate and have our own opinions. But again, that goes more into the motive, and I don't want to go down that route today. My interpretation was she was okay with viewers and creators having different opinions, but it got to be too much when drama channels were constantly roasting her and not respecting her opposing opinion. Madison C., I never saw anyone like not respecting her opposing opinion. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but I haven't seen anyone like roasting her as a person or not respecting her opinion. What I have seen is other people giving their opposing opinions on their channels. And that's to say, I don't watch everybody. So again, it's likely that it could be possible that it happened, but I hadn't seen that. The videos that I have seen of people kind of disagreeing with her have been fairly respectful, but them also giving their opinion about the situations at hand. And I mean, that's a two-way street, and that honestly ends up being a circular argument. You think she left because she got called out for lying? In what aspect? Like, I don't know. Mysterious left because she was threatened to be doxxed. I really hope that didn't happen, but you know, the realist in me knows that probably did happen. And that's a really shitty position for any creator to be in. None of us really want to be doxxed. So I can identify with her in that. But at the same time, coming on this platform, it should automatically be known that that is a potential, especially if you're going to talk about something super controversial and talk about a polarizing figure. You are dangling yourself out there for people to, when you're talking about someone as polarizing as Trisha, who has the stands that she does have, you're risking that. And it's something that you would know. When this initially broke and I was thinking about, mulling through deciding, it was a conversation I had with myself, knowing that people aren't going to be willing to listen to my side. People aren't going to be willing to listen to my perspective on this. And a lot of people who support Mysterious are stands of other people. I think it goes both ways. And when it comes to standing culture, they go to any length that they can to affect the person they don't like or they don't agree with. So it's even a conversation I had with myself. If I was going to talk about this publicly, like, I know that that is always a potential when I talk about another creator. It's a really crappy and unfortunate part of being a YouTube creator in today's space is the potential of doxing. It's a decision that you have to make before you make videos. It sucks that it's one that we have to make, but it really is a reality of being on this platform. She just used everything Trisha said as content. How did she lie? I don't know. I don't know what the aspect of saying Mysterious lied. Mysterious was putting her own opinion out there, and the way that it was formulated really does kind of push a motive there or a bias. And it's that it wasn't clearly stated, and the way that it was put together is very misleading and manipulative, in my opinion. Exactly, Beauty Demon. People are so gross online. I don't doubt that someone threatened to do that. I don't either. And that's absolutely terrible. But, and like, I understand her having a knee-jerk reaction like that, especially since she is someone who has wanted to remain totally anonymous. To have that threatened is probably very scary, but it is a reality that she had to have known that was a potential to happen, especially knowing that she covered Katie Joy previously. That was one of the first content creators she was criticizing. And it's known in Katie Joy, both pro-Katie and anti-Katie communities, that they're rampant with doxing people. So she had to have known that talking about certain topics, you run the risk of someone being absolutely awful and engaging in behavior like that. She cherry picked on her evidence and pushed an agenda with it. I agree. And again, that kind of goes more into the motive. And I do have opinions about the motive. It's just not something I intended on having as a part of today's discussion. Yeah, I understand that, Belinda Paul, and I have similar thoughts to that as well. Childhood trauma should never be used as content on YouTube unless it's a person talking about it. Nobody has the right to question someone else's childhood trauma, in my opinion. And it's not even just childhood trauma, it's trauma in general. I don't think it's appropriate for anyone to question someone else's trauma or to imply that they're lying when it could be a result of the trauma. If you're going to be doing videos trying to pick apart someone's trauma, it would behoove you to do some research on trauma itself to make sure that you're being informed in the information you're putting out there. It's very irresponsible to not do that. In your opinion, both YouTube and Twitter need to take doxing much more serious. Yeah, I agree. It's a rampant issue right now. I don't understand why people engage in it. I really don't. It does nothing but harm people. All right, guys. So those have been my unpopular opinions about the videos as a whole in themselves. Again, I do have opinions and things like that about the motive and the bias behind it. I didn't go into those today. If that's something you guys want, I'll put a poll up on my community page later today, and you guys can vote, and it can be something that I discuss further at a later date, but I'm not going to do that today. I am going to go ahead and start wrapping up the stream. So I appreciate everybody who participated in the conversation today, and anyone who maybe doesn't agree with me, at least hear me out. Like, I appreciate that aspect of it as well. I know not everybody's going to agree with me or even understand or try to understand where I'm coming from, and I'm okay with that. But it took me about a week to become okay with that, to deal with any potential backlash or negative attention that I may get from these videos, because it's a responsible thing to do as a creator, in my opinion. But it's been lovely. I appreciate you all. As always, you guys are, if you have any additional follow-up things, or if you said anything and I missed it in the chat, you guys are welcome to reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram, or even my email that's linked below. Otherwise, I appreciate you being here. You guys are all awesome, and I hope you all have a good rest of your Friday and a good weekend. And I'm not sure yet, but if Xylee goes live tonight, I will be there. So that's always a potential for you guys to hang out. And I know she's done quite a bit of coverage on this, and I think she's still going to continue to cover this a little bit more. So if you're wanting more in-depth coverage about the Mysterious and Trisha Paytas stuff, check out her channel. And with that being said, I'm going to hop off of here. I hope you all have a good one. Bye.